Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all this morning, or it may not be morning for you. I see we have a very international audience, which is awesome. And today I'm going to be presenting on how to communicate professionally. So I'm Mira Williamson. I'm PLT Canada's Senior Communications Coordinator. Je m'appelle Mira Williamson et je suis la coordinatrice principale des communications d'APLT Canada. Bonjour tout le monde. Alors, on va commencer maintenant. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about PLT Canada. PLT Canada is a nonprofit initiative of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative. We envision a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests and the great outdoors. SFI is an independent nonprofit organization that works in standards, conservation, education, and community to achieve a vision of a world that values and benefits from sustainably managed forests. PLT Canada is committed to using the outdoors to engage youth in learning about the world around them in rural, Indigenous, and urban communities, and advancing environmental literacy, stewardship, and career pathways using trees and forests as windows on the world. Since 2018, we've placed over 5,000 youth into green jobs across 12 provinces and territories by supporting over 250 employers in the Sustainable Forestry Initiative and Canadian Parks Council networks. In addition to job placements, we offer a high-quality mentorship program for youth and forest and conservation sector professionals. We provide opportunities for youth to attend networking events and training workshops, and we also offer a wide variety of career resources on our website. So today, we're going to be talking about first curating your online presence, then acting professionally in different work environments, writing professional messages, and resolving workplace conflicts. Then there will be a short final takeaways and questions section. So first, let's talk about curating your online presence. When you apply to a job or reach out to somebody, they will usually look up your name on social media sites to get a sense of what you're like. But do your social media pages reflect your professional self? What kind of content do you post or interact with? If an employer sees you posting about partying and maybe you're underage or saying offensive things, they may not want to pursue your application further. So what can you do to avoid this? First, make all of your accounts private if you're posting about personal things. Change your privacy settings so that only people who follow you or are friends with you can see your posts. Second, even if all of your privacy settings are on, it's still a good idea to not post or interact with, and by that I mean liking, sharing, or commenting with inappropriate content. Nothing on the internet is completely private. Somebody could screenshot your post and share it on their public account. You could have a mutual connection with somebody at the organization you're interested in, or you could get hacked. And once something is online, so if it's posted, emailed, whatever it may be, you don't really have control over it anymore. So the safest way to have an online presence is to ensure that all your content and interactions are appropriate. They don't all have to be professional. You can still comment on your friends' posts or tweet about your interests, but a good rule to follow before posting anything is to ask yourself, am I comfortable with a potential employer seeing this? And lastly, make sure all your handles or usernames are appropriate. Even with your privacy settings on, people can still see what your handles are. And they don't have to be your full name. You might be worried about security issues, but they just shouldn't suggest something inappropriate. Now, for your email address and display name, you will want to make sure that it's not just appropriate, but also professional. You don't want to email an employer
Oh, Mira, I think you were muted.
I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. What I was saying is you don't want to email an employer from an address like soccerlover@gmail.com. It won't seem very professional. You can always use firstname.lastname@gmail.com or whatever server you're using. You can use your initials if you're not comfortable sharing your full name. You just don't want an employer to see the unprofessional email address or display name. So when you create your email account, you put in a first name and a last name, and this does show up in somebody's inbox. So once somebody emailed us as Yeet LMAO, which I think they just put in for safety reasons, but it's important to know that people can see that, and it does seem unprofessional. So I've talked a lot about privacy and making sure that you keep your personal stuff private and your professional stuff can be public. But if you want tips on upgrading your LinkedIn profile or just making your social media sites more professional, my coworker Alex had a great webinar last month, and Maria is going to put the link in the chat if you're interested in checking it out. And now I'm going to talk about acting professionally in different work environments. So first, what is professionalism? It includes the way you carry yourself, your attitude, and the ways you communicate with others. You can communicate your professionalism in the way you speak to others, dress, and act. Why is it important? You only have 7 seconds to make a first impression, so you want to be presenting your best self and communicating professionalism. You can do this by being polite, respectful, formal, and dressed appropriately. At a basic level, professional communication is about being polite and respectful. You want to respect the other person's time, position, and expertise, and obviously not offend them. In a professional context, it is better to be overly formal if you do not have an established relationship with the person you are communicating with. Your first communication to a person should not resemble a casual message you might send to a friend. You don't want to lose out on a job or be discounted just because you didn't communicate professionally. And I'm going to talk more about dressing appropriately on the next slide. So obviously where you work has an effect on how you'll dress and act. If you're in the field, in an office, or working remotely, you might be wearing different things. And different offices have different dress codes. So maybe you'll find yourself in steel-toed boots and a high-vis vest, or in a full suit. It really just depends on your location and company culture. My general tip here, if you are unsure of, my general tip here is to review your employee handbook or ask human resources or your supervisor if you have questions about the dress code or the employee code of conduct. You should find all the information you need there or by asking. So if everybody wouldn't mind joining Slido, Maria is going to put the link in the chat. You can have this up on a different browser or on your phone, and you just enter that game code 140465. If you are not able to access a different browser, you can put your responses in the chat. And for this one, I would like you to rank the outfit options in the following order. So put number 1 as what you would wear in an office, number 2 as what you would wear in the field, and number 3, what you would wear to an interview. How you can do the ranking is if you click the option, it will go up to the number 1 position, and then the next one, number 2, the next one, number 3. You'll also be able to move them around afterwards. So the first outfit option here is loafers, which are kind of like dress shoes or more casual dress shoes, slacks, a button-up shirt under a sweater. The second is hiking boots, cargo pants, a high visibility vest and sunglasses. And the third is dress shoes, maybe even heels, a suit, which would include dress pants, a button-up shirt, a tie and a blazer, or potentially a knee-length skirt, blouse, and blazer. So as you can see, number 1, what you would wear to an office, you guys got that right. That would be loafers, slacks, a button-up shirt under a sweater. And in the field, you might be wearing hiking boots, cargo pants, more casual, more suitable for outdoor work. And then number 3, you're going to go more dressier. As a general rule, I always dress more formally for an interview than I would on the job. So in a suit or in a nice dress and heels. And if you're not sure about what you should wear to the interview, you can always ask the person who's going to be interviewing you. So we have another Slido here, which is, it's going to be a word cloud. So at the same link, you can type in some suggestions. And I'd like to know how you would show up to a work-related video call. So you can think about what clothes you might wear, where you might call in from, background noise, things like that. Let's see what some of our remote video call meeting tips are. On time in a quiet location, definitely. On time or early, yeah. A dress shirt on time, very important. Nice shirt and blurred background. Yes, blurred backgrounds are great. I also love our virtual backgrounds here, which are just photos. Somewhere with a white background. Yep, a white background or a plain background is always good. Quiet room, blurred or alternate background, yes. Dress fancy. I think somebody's answer got a bit cut up there, but I'm seeing a lot of well-dressed, earrings. Early is always good, especially for an interview. I say arrive minimum 15 minutes early. Anything more than that, I would consider late to an interview. Good internet, yes. Formal on the top half, definitely. I also sometimes, I like to wear dress pants on the bottom half, just, I don't want to trick myself into feeling too comfortable if I'm wearing sweatpants, or if I have to get up suddenly and then it's exposed that I'm in sweatpants. Good microphone, good lighting. Awesome. These are some great tips. Perfect. Good breakfast. Don't show up hungry. That's a good tip. Internet connection, proper dress code. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to move on now. But thanks so much for contributing. So you guys hit, I think, all of the points that I have here. Number one, sit in front of a plain or a clean background, or put a virtual background behind you to hide the mess. Number two, try to move to a quiet area. It can be really distracting if there's a lot of background noise and you don't want your interviewer or whoever you're talking to get distracted and not pay attention to what you're saying. I know this is not always possible, depending on your living situation. And if you're not able to maybe book a room at the library or your school, if it's not possible, I would just suggest addressing it at the beginning of your call. So saying, sorry for the noisy background. I know it's distracting, but I wasn't able to do anything about it. The next is to dress in work appropriate clothes, and work appropriate is whatever the office dress code is. So even if you are working from home, you should be following the office dress code. These last two tips are to take it to the next level. So it's just ensuring that your whole head is in the frame. You don't want to be cutting off your forehead or your chin or anything like that, just to make sure that all of it is visible. And then last is to sit in front of a light source. So this way it will illuminate your face and you'll be able to see everything nicely. If the light is coming from behind you, it's going to cast shadows on your face. It's going to hide your expressions, and it's just better if your face is lit up. These tips are more and more important as we are starting to work online. And so you should be showing up to video calls as if you were in the office, even if you might just be in your bedroom. How you present yourself in a phone call or video can impact your chances of getting accepted to a program or even getting a job. If you're in a noisy area, dress casually, and your background is messy, the interviewer may think that you're not taking it seriously. But no matter where you work, you can contribute to a professional environment. Just remember to always be respectful, polite, and punctual. Like I said, show up early if possible by 15 minutes. Especially for interviews, it's important to be at least 15 minutes early. Remember to follow your organization's dress code, which you can find in your employee handbook or by asking HR or your supervisor. Remember to keep a positive attitude and open mind, be receptive to new ideas. And finally, practice proactive communication. So what I mean by proactive communication is telling your coworkers about something before it becomes an issue. Are you feeling sick? Don't wait for your boss to message you asking where you are. Send them an email saying that you are unwell and won't be able to make it into work. Are you going to miss a project deadline? Let them know as soon as possible so they can help you prioritize your tasks or bring in another team member to support you. Oh, sorry, I need some water. It's a lot of talking. Now I'm going to move on to the next section, which is writing professional messages. So for professional written communication, there are two main factors that are going to determine how formal you're going to be. And the first is, who am I talking to? So you're not going to speak the same way to the CEO of your company as you would to your close coworker. And the second factor is, what am I talking to them about? So certain subject matters, like if you're asking for a promotion or a raise, even if you are close to your supervisor and normally would talk to them very casually, you would probably send a more formal message about asking for a raise or for a promotion. So when you're thinking about how you're going to either speak about something or write about something, just consider these two factors to help you determine how formal to be. And here I have just a generic structure that can work for almost any professional email that you're going to be sending out. So first you would start with a greeting, hello, and you would address the person by their name. I like to add what I call an introductory sentence. So something like, I hope you're doing well, or I hope you had a great weekend. You don't need to include this. Sometimes it's nice to send a little message like that. The second section, introducing yourself, I've highlighted it in purple because you don't always use this in every communication that you send. For example, if you're emailing your supervisor, you're not going to introduce yourself in every email that you send out. But if you are emailing somebody that you've never met or never spoken to before, I would include 1 to 2 sentences just telling them who you are so they have that context. Finally, you move down to what I call the ask, or the point of the email, what you want from the person you're emailing. Maybe you want your supervisor to review a project. Maybe you're asking for clarification, whatever it might be. This section should be specific and you should get to it quickly so that you're not wasting anybody's time. And finally, you would sign off. So you can say something like thank you or best, cheers, warmly, and sign your name. I will also be sending out email templates later this week or early next week that you can use for different situations. So reaching out to somebody you don't know, flagging something to a supervisor, things like that. So you should look for those in your inbox in the next few days. All right, so we're going back on Slido. And again, you can join from another browser at the same Slido link with the same code. Or if you don't have another one, you can just put your answers in the chat. So this is a scenario, and I want you to choose the best message out of these options to send. And the scenario is you completed a project and are sending it to your supervisor. Option 1. Hi, Mr. Smith. I hope you are well. I successfully accomplished the task you set me. It was very enjoyable, and I am happy with the end result. I hope you are too. Thanks, Mira. Second option. Hi, Jane. I've attached the presentation on professional communication. Please let me know if you need anything else or if you have any questions. Thanks, Mira. Third option. Here's the presentation, Mira. I see there is a question here. Should we write the first name or the full name? And so that depends on who you're writing to. If you're writing to somebody for the first time, I would sign my full name. So I would say Mira Williamson. If I'm writing to a coworker or my supervisor, I would just sign off my first name because they know who I am. All right, so I see we have got some votes in, and the majority of people chose the first option, which is a good option. However, I would say that the second option is better. In general, I address my supervisors by their first name. Maybe if you're in a very formal environment, you would address them by Mr. and their last name. The second message is more specific, so it says exactly what I've attached, which is the presentation on professional communication. Your supervisors are working on a lot of different projects. So if you just say, I accomplished the task you set me, they might not know, they won't know immediately what you're talking about. And the first message also has some information that is not necessary, like it was very enjoyable and I'm happy with the end result. It's not really necessary to include that. So the second message gets straight to the point and is more specific. So here is another scenario, and select the best message. You don't understand a task your supervisor set for you. Yes, I see a message from Finn. Smiley faces are professional. That's great news. I think that it is okay to send emojis if you have a close relationship with the person. I send emojis at work all the time. If I don't know the person, I would probably refrain from sending emojis. But if it's my boss and I have a close relationship with them, I don't see the issue with sending a smiley face. So the first option. Hi, John. I started working on the budget proposal for the 2022 mentorship program, but I'm unsure how detailed you would like it. Could you please send me more information on what you would like to see, or send me a past budget to work off of? Thank you. Second option. Hey, I don't get what you're asking me to do. Third option. Hello, Jane. I don't understand specifically what you are looking for with this budget proposal. I've done them in the past, but I'm not sure what you're looking for specifically. Thanks, Mira. Let's see what people are voting. So most people have voted for the first message, and that is the best message to send. The third message is not a bad message to send, but why the first one is better is that it's more specific. So again, it's specific about the budget proposal for this 2022 mentorship program. And it's asking specifically what they would like from the boss. So can you send me information on what you would like to see, or, you know, a template to work off of? And the last scenario is you are going to miss a project deadline that your supervisor set. So the first message is, hi, sir, the timeline you set for this project was unrealistic. I'm not going to make it. It's too much work to get done in the next few days. I have other tasks I'm working on too, so it's not possible. I will try to send it to you next week, however. Second message. Hi, Jordan. Unfortunately, the forestry blog is taking more time than I expected, and I don't think I will be able to meet the deadline you set, February 25th. Is there someone on the team who can support this task, or can I send it to you next week? Third option, I won't have it ready today. Sorry, Mira. All right, great. So most people are thinking that it is the second message. And that is correct. The last message isn't great because you've waited until the day of the due date to say that the project won't be ready. Ideally, you should be letting them know in advance. The first message is, it's okay, but it's not as good as the second message, which again is specific about the project, shares what the deadline was supervisor might have forgotten what deadline they set, and it asks if you are able to get support on the task or if you can push the deadline back. So my final email or professional written communication tips are proofread. Try not to send any messages with spelling or grammatical errors. If you are not good yourself at finding these mistakes, ask a friend, a coworker, a family member to help you. You can also use spell check software like on Microsoft Word, on Google Docs, or Grammarly. The second point, and we talked about this a little bit, is don't use acronyms like LOL or emojis if you don't know the person you're talking to. So it's okay for me to send a smiley face to my boss that I have a good relationship with because I know that they've sent me smiley faces in the past and they're okay with that. If I'm reaching out to a new contact, I don't know if they'll find it unprofessional, so I wouldn't say LOL or send a smiley face or anything like that. The third point is don't use a million exclamation points. This is something I'm guilty of. I love using exclamation points. But again, if you don't know the person, it could come across as unprofessional if every sentence is ended with an exclamation point. A good rule to follow is don't end two sentences in a row with exclamation points, or you can try and limit it to one exclamation point per paragraph in your email, or even two per email. And then just following that rule will help you limit the exclamation points that you use. The fourth point is get to your ask quickly and be specific. So I talked about this before, but essentially get to the point of the email as fast as you can. People don't have a lot of time to read super long emails and they just want to know quickly what you're asking of them. And the more specific you can be, the easier it is for them to understand if they can provide you the answer or if they need to direct you to someone else. Next is include dates in the subject line. So if you're emailing somebody about an event or something has a deadline, it can be good practice to include that date in the subject line so that the person you're emailing understands that it's time sensitive. You can also try to make your subject lines easily searchable. So what I mean by this is if you're talking to somebody about a specific project, put that project name in the email subject line. So if they're trying to find that information later on, they can just search the project name in the inbox and your email should pop up. And last, this is another privacy warning. Private work messages are not really private. So if you have like a Slack channel or Zoom chats, if you're just sending an email to one coworker, you might think that it is a private message. Technically, your employer can search your messages. I'm not saying they're actively looking through your messages, but they do have access to them, especially if an issue arises. So I would just advise you to not send something in an email or a work message that you are not comfortable with, say, your employer seeing. It's just a good practice to follow. We have a lot of other free communication resources in our store. So Maria's going to put the link in the chat. And I see there's some chats here. And this is the last section on resolving workplace conflicts. I'm going to talk about two kinds of conflicts that could come up at work. It's not the only conflicts that could come up, but we don't have a ton of time today. So the first situation will be receiving constructive criticism. And the second will be when you have a different opinion than your coworker. In any situation, my general tip, if somebody's message has made you angry or emotional, is to not respond right away. You're more likely to send a message you wish you hadn't if you respond immediately. So, walk away from your computer, take a minute, maybe even take 24 hours and then respond. And when you do, remember to remain polite and professional. Even if the message you received was not, it's better to take the high road. So we're going to do some another scenario here. Give people some time to join. And is the same link. Oh, okay, I think that's fine. So the scenario is you handed in an article and your supervisor responded with constructive criticism. How should you respond? First option, thanks. I know how to write though. Second option, no response. Third option, thanks, Julia. I will make sure to incorporate your feedback for the next post I write. And I'll just give everybody a second. Yes, you can access this quiz on slido.com. Oh, there we go. Maria's putting it in the chat. Thank you, Maria. All right. Let's see what the results are. So the majority of people chose option 3, which is thanks, Julia. I will make sure to incorporate your feedback for the next post I write. And that is the correct response. The first one can come across as rude. The second one, maybe you wouldn't send a response, but it's always good practice to thank your supervisor for taking the time to give you some constructive feedback. And you will routinely receive constructive criticism at work. And it's not the same as simply criticism, it's feedback on how you could improve. It's very important for your professional growth. But if you're not used to it, it might feel personal. So when you receive constructive criticism, and if it's starting to feel personal, try to remember that the person giving you the feedback is coming from a place of wanting to help your professional growth, not wanting to hurt you or to take you down a peg. They want to help you grow professionally. And if you listen to the feedback and work on it, your work as a whole will improve and it will help your overall career growth. So like we saw in the situation before, you should thank your colleagues for providing constructive criticism. You'll also probably find yourself in a situation where you have to provide constructive criticism to a colleague. If you're unsure the best way to do this, I have another simple little formula here that I call the compliment sandwich, which is to start with a compliment like great work on this, and then provide your constructive feedback. So maybe I think this section could be improved. Next time you should try XYZ. And it's important that this is constructive, not just saying this section is bad. Tell them how it could be improved. Otherwise, it will come across as just criticism and not constructive criticism. And then after you've provided that feedback, end with another compliment. So you could say, thanks again for working on this. It's looking really good, or something to that effect. And this is the last Slido quiz. So the scenario is your coworker has a different opinion on how to approach a project. How should you respond? First option, thanks for sharing your opinion. Second option, I have more experience in this area than you, so we should follow my expertise. Third option, I hadn't considered that point of view. Could you please elaborate? I would love to hear more. And I'll give you guys a minute for this one. All right, a few more seconds. Great, so the majority of people selected, I hadn't considered that point of view. Could you please elaborate? I would love to hear more. And that is what I would say the best response would be. The first one is okay. You just would want to be conscious of your tone, because when you say thanks for sharing your opinion, it could come across well, or it could come across as sarcastic, especially if you're writing it in a message. But you always want to be open to hearing other points of view, because you might not have considered it, and it would improve a project. Awesome. So I see in all the quiz sections that we had, Kaylee got number 1. Great job. So for differing opinions, like I said, it's inevitable that you and a colleague will feel differently about a task or a way to approach a project. But it doesn't have to lead to an argument. A healthy discussion where you hear each other out and ask clarifying questions can actually improve a project. So I have some tips for when you and a coworker have a different opinion. Number 1, don't dismiss an opinion just because it's different than yours. Make sure that you're hearing them out. And number 2, don't be afraid to articulate your own opinion and your reasoning behind it. If your supervisor has one way of doing things, I don't want you to be afraid to share if you have a different opinion, because they might not have considered it from that point of view. And it's always good to hear different ways to attack a problem. Finally, if you have heard out the other person's opinion and they've heard out yours and you still can't come to an agreement or a compromise, you can ask yourself, how strongly do I feel about this? If you don't feel very strongly about it and you don't care that much if you go with the other person's way of attacking the problem, maybe this time you let it go. If you do feel strongly about it and your coworker does as well, you could consider bringing in a third party, so maybe another coworker or your boss, to provide their opinion. And finally, you could think if there is a different way that you could frame your reasoning or your opinion so that your coworker understands why it's important. So just think of a different way to communicate it or to talk about it. A different example. And always keep in mind when you are discussing a different opinion, you need to consider the words that you use, but also understand that you communicate in other ways too. So it's not just what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. Some things to think about are your body language and hand movements. Maybe unintentionally you are coming across as aggressive. Maybe you're crossing your arms and you're seeming closed off or doing some aggressive hand movements. So it's just important to keep that in check, to keep it neutral. You also need to think about the tone that you're using, whether this is in verbal or written communication. So just making sure, again, that you have a neutral tone. It doesn't sound angry. It doesn't sound sarcastic. And finally, make sure you're not invading someone's personal space. It can make them feel attacked or ganged up on. Just make sure you're giving somebody enough space when you're having, I don't want to call it an argument, but a discussion. So after all of that information, I know it's a lot of information. I think my advice can be boiled down to 3 main things, which is number 1, better to be safe than sorry. It's better to err on the side of caution. It's better to be overly formal, overly polite, or overly respectful than to not do enough and have the other person think you're unprofessional. Number 2, remember to adapt to the situation. The same approach doesn't make sense in every single situation. So just think about who you're talking about, where this conversation is taking place, what you're talking about, and when it's happening. So is it a really stressful time for the other person? Is it a really stressful time for you? Just consider all those factors and adjust your strategy depending on those. And finally, and most importantly, if you don't know, ask. There's no shame in asking for clarification. Your supervisor would be more than happy to give you the answers that you don't know. And if you don't know, you don't know. So don't be afraid to ask a question. There are no stupid questions. So thank you so much. for coming today. I am now going to open it up for questions. You can unmute yourself, you can put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And I want to thank my colleagues, Jerry and Maria, for helping me out today.
We have one question. I see a hand raised, and I don't want to mispronounce your name. It's Mr. Coleman. I don't.
Yeah, no, the name is fine. Everybody struggles with it. It's
So how do you say it? Because I want to say it right.
Sören.
Okay, thank you. So it's Sören.
Yeah, right? I mean it's usually native English speakers struggle with it the most because it's the German version of a Danish name, so it has the very flat pronunciation and an umlaut. So no. Question would be, so how do you deal with, I guess, intercultural differences in, I guess, communication in general, in written and or spoken, I guess? Is there sort of a fail-safe, so to speak?
I think that's a great question. I think one of the things, like, for example, I'm coming to SFI from America, it's a lot of Canadian practices. So one of the things that I would say is when you're researching your company or organization or who you're working with, even your supervisor, learning a little bit about their background and understanding like basic things within the culture. So doing some research, I think is a huge piece that I would say. Like I had to realize in certain cultures, eye contact can be very aggressive from a female. So understanding that, like, when I speak to a person, I have to be careful of my tone. I have to make sure like not overly looking at them in the eye. So just like, I think the biggest key is like research is huge. And then also honestly asking people, because people's body language will show you that they feel uncomfortable, and just saying, hey, did I make you feel uncomfortable? Please explain. Like I noticed that we don't share the same culture. And I think sometimes people are nervous about being upfront with that, but oftentimes people respect that because it shows that you're trying to learn about them and take that time, which most people don't do that. So I think even asking, how do you like to be approached? Or I noticed that I made you feel uncomfortable when I stated X, Y, and Z would help a person, because culture is very challenging when you're working with people from different places. So I do think that that's very important. It's also asking, honestly.
Thanks, Jerry. I think that's great advice for many situations. Do we have any other questions? I haven't seen anything in the chat.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I see one. Sorry.
My name is Shalom. My question is like, even I try to keep a professionalism in the workplace. Some people are like a more casual type, like, you know, they like to have like simple conversation, stuff like that. But, you know, some point we may think, oh, are we talking too much, or are we getting out of the topic? How we can be, you know, keep that professionalism, or if that person is not that into professionalism, like they are like a casual, like a friends, rather than, you know, being like a real professionalism. How I can handle that kind of situation?
My rule of thumb, okay, so I'll give you a background. My background is career counseling. I don't know if they shared that with you, but I'm a career counselor. My advice to anybody I work with in career counseling, be yourself. I'm super professional at most spaces at work. Some people are not that professional, and it's okay to be that person that just is always professional. That's just how people will approach you. And that's okay if that's your form of communication. That's your boundary that you're setting at work. And that's okay. People have to conform to how you like to communicate. And it doesn't mean that it changes your opportunities at the job. That's just who you are, and that's your personality. So I'm one of those people, just be who you are on the job. Don't change your personality. I've been in settings that have been very unprofessional, and I've been very professional. And that honestly has been the thing that when I've transitioned to other jobs, that was one thing that they've always said about me. She's been able to maintain professionalism in situations where hasn't always been professional. And so that's one thing that can be stated about my character at work. So just be yourself, honestly. And if the conversations do get inappropriate or make you feel uncomfortable, you can always say, you know, I'm going to leave the conversation now. This feels uncomfortable, and step away. I've done it plenty of times at work. Like, hey, I don't think this conversation is for me. I'm going to go back to my desk or find something else to do, you know, if you're very uncomfortable. I also saw another question in the chat that I would like to go back to. What time is appropriate to reply to business emails? I always tell people stick within business hours. So if your company is from 9 to 5, do not email a person at 5:01. Please stay within the 9 to 5 time, just because it becomes just, you know, inappropriate. Like I've had people email me at 12 a.m. That's so inappropriate because a lot of people in corporate jobs, our emails are attached to our phones, and that's our private time with our family. So just think about, would you want your job is setting the appropriate boundaries? Would you want your job contacting you at that time? So I just tell people stick within the times of the office hours. I also see a question from, I want to make sure I say your name right, Saqib, Mr. Ali, did I say your name right?
Yes, Jerry, you said my name correctly.
Okay.
First of all, I have two questions to ask regarding the last question that you have said. First of all, like when exactly is the time that you should send a message to a particular person? Regarding if you're living in the if you're living in the Northern American region, like I know about the European region because based on my studies in there. But what is the time range that I should send a mail to a particular person? It depends on the time.
So it depends on the time zone, but the beautiful thing about your email box, which I can show you this after the call, is you can set it up with the different time zones so that you know that you're sending the emails at appropriate times. Because I had to do that. Like we have people in this organization that I'm emailing from Canada to Europe, and I need to make sure I'm respectful. So I just make sure that my emails, you can set a timer for your emails to be on like Eastern time or Pacific time or whatever time you're in, Mountain time. That way you can ensure that you're reaching them at the appropriate time, because it's hard with time zones, you know.
And my second question is like, how many times should you send a professor or a respondent or an employee of the company to a mail? Like how many times can you send a mail to that person?
How many times can you send an email to a person? I'll be honest, like I try to give people 48 hours to 72 hours. If I haven't heard a response, I send a lovely nudge and just say, hi, please see attached the email I sent on this date. I'm just trying to follow up. And then I give them another 72 hours. If I don't hear from them, then if it is a professor that I can see in person, then I'll try to see them in person. Oftentimes it's not that they're avoiding you, because I've been a professor. It's just that you're getting like 100 emails and you're teaching classes and it's grading. So it's not really personal. So I think a lot of it is just staying on the professor. And then if you don't get a response, definitely trying to catch them in person is the best way to go about it, if you can.
So yes, the reason I'm asking this so that I can take a preparation for my own well-being. Like if the next time when I will talk with a professor or my present mentor in this program, so some of the steps that I need to take a preparation for that. But anyways, thank you so much for this advice, and if I have any queries that arises, then I will communicate with the three of you.
And I have a question for you. Have you asked your professor what's the best time to reach them? Because sometimes that's another good way. Like, what's the best time, or you have free time, when is the best time I can reach you as well?
First, ask this. If it's my present professor, so prior to my MSc program, when I was in the UK, so what happened was like from there I able to know that if you want to send someone a mail, that has to be something like 9 to 5. That's the time range that I
Whatever the business,
only thing I
the
know.
hours.
So maybe there are some cultural differences that
Hello?
Hello.
Hello? I don't know if our internet. Huh.
Jerry, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes,
Hello.
I can hear you,
Hello.
Sally. Hello.
Yes, Maria. Yes. Hello, Jerry.
Yes.
Maybe the video is the main problem. I have an internet problem up here. Hello. Can you hear me right now? So,
Yeah.
so let's start from the top. So what happened was in the UK, I just know that you have 9 to 5. This is the time that you have to speak with a professor or even with your supervisor as well. But I don't know about I don't know about the system in other European regions and also in Northern America. So that's the reason I was asked you about this. Like, how many times can you send those things up and the time range as well?
So
If that makes sense,
typically,
and hopefully I explained it.
you did well. You explained well. Like I said, typically I go about like 48 to 72 hours is like what we say in America. Like if you haven't heard back within 48 hours, then you need to hit that person. You need to reach out to them again. But again, like I said, you can always ask what's a great time to speak to you if you can't reach, if you're unable to reach them after a couple of tries. Like, hey, I've tried to contact you a couple of times. What's the best time? And that a lot of times people will tell you, hey, contact me at this time, at this date, or schedule an appointment with you. But yeah, that's pretty much typical, just following.
All right, all right. I got the I like if I have any queries again, there are 3 email addresses that are mentioned up in here. I will definitely lock either you, Maria, or Mira in the future.
Perfect. And we will help you construct whatever email, trying to figure out the best way to reach your professor, and we can help you with that. I also see another question up here from Denise, and I just want to make sure we answer your question, but also Denise's question, because I also have seen that. Does it make sense that you address what and why the conversation makes you uncomfortable? It doesn't have to be a confrontation, but a dialogue to discuss perspectives and keep work relations working. I think it's important, not in the moment where your emotions are high, because oftentimes when someone has made you feel uncomfortable, your emotions are high. I've had experiences like this where someone has said something at work that had taken me aback or made me feel uncomfortable, and how I've handled that is like, hey, schedule a time, or if we're both in a location like getting water or something, just, hey, can I speak to you for a moment? Yesterday, when we talked about this, I always tell people to use I feel statements because they're not confrontational. So I felt disrespected, or I felt uncomfortable when you stated X, Y, and Z. I hope in the future we can communicate with each other in a more professional manner. And this is what it looks like for me. And can you share with me how you would like to be communicated with as well? I think a lot of times if you use I feel statements, it takes away the personal action, is really how it impacted me. And people actually are more willing to react to that in a more positive way. And I always tell people, take out the subject, you hurt my feelings, you were disrespectful, because that causes confrontation in communication. So it's just best to just go with I feel, and then what the feeling is, and then what they did that created that feeling, and then they have that conversation. And I think it's important that you do have dialogues like that with people. Was that a good answer for you, Denise? I don't know if you're still on the call.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I see another one up here is it okay to respond the next day or after the next day, or will it be not polite? I mean, it depends on the project or what you're working on. If it's something that has a fast turnaround, I think that it is respectful to respond as soon as possible. I kind of keep a rule of thumb. If it's not something that's that important and it comes in after 3:30, I'm going to respond in the morning if I'm working on another project, just because I don't have time to really look at what they're asking me to do. But if it is something that's urgent, and most times professionals will tell you this is urgent, I need it to be responded as soon as possible, then you know this is a task that I must respond to right now. And so I kind of gauge that. And sometimes I ask, is this something that has to be done like today? Just so that I know my time as well, so I can manage that. Okay.
And I know a lot of people are heading off now. I see a question about when can I, or where can I find the recording, we will send that out in the next few days or early next week. And thank you so much, Jerry, for answering these questions. And thank you everybody for asking them. Again, we have our email addresses here, so you can connect with us that way. And then I just wanted to end with an invitation to practice sending a professional message. So Maria has my LinkedIn URL, and you are more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, but I want you to send a message with your connection request. This is kind of a best practice, especially if you've attended a webinar. You know, I might not recognize your name when you send the connection, but we do have this webinar in common. So in that message, remember to include who you are and where you know me from and why you would like to add me to your network. And thank you again, everybody, for coming today. I hope that you were able to gain something. And once again, thank you to Maria and Jerry for providing support today.
If you would like a work experience in the forest and conservation sector, or would like to learn about our mentorship program and career resources, visit pltcanada.org.